Bram. While they take off, I want to introduce somebody that I have been watching secretly for years. He is on 12 News. He's one of the best anchors and reporters, hosts Sunday Now, a great political show. Every Sunday is on Channel 12. And we like to call him the pit bull when it comes to interviewing candidates and talking politics. And Bram, I just found this out. Are you a Medill grad? He is a Medill grad. That's where I got my master's as well, so I feel like I'm in great company. So please welcome the mayor of Phoenix, the mayor of Tucson, and our moderator, Bram Resnick.
Whoa. Is this room shaking or what? Okay. Thank you all for having us today. If you haven't heard by now, mayors are hot. Yeah, these guys right here. Especially this guy. Mayors are hot right now. They are coming up with policy solutions. They are inserting themselves in all kinds of issues they never inserted themselves into before, in particular on a national stage, not just locally or statewide, but on a national stage. Joining me today are two mayors who have done just that, Mayor Jonathan Rothschild of Tucson, and of course, Mayor Greg Stanton of Phoenix. Good to see you. It is true that Tucson and Phoenix can work together. You're going to hear living evidence of that, living testimony of that today. First off, give folks an idea of how you guys met. When, where, why?
Well, in Phoenix, you run nonpartisan elections, so I know you don't know what party Greg is from. But in Tucson, we're one of the few jurisdictions left that run partisan elections. Which are also democratic. In Tucson are also democratic elections. Anyway, so I think Greg and I probably met first about 6 years ago in helping other people in their campaigns, and found that we had common interests. We are both attorneys. I'm much older than Greg, but of kind of coming from the same backgrounds. And so we just started talking, and as it turned out, we both ran for mayor of our communities in the same year, 2011. And probably Greg reached out first because he has that interest and said, look, we need to really bring Tucson and Phoenix more together. If we're elected, let's talk about issues that we can work on together and see if we can take what are the two biggest cities in the state and help move Arizona forward. And so that was really where the dialogue started.
We know through the kind of the essentialness of cities. So we did run together. We actually campaigned together in Tucson, and Jonathan and I campaigned together up in Phoenix using that argument that cities need to take the lead. And remember in 2011, it was just shortly after 1070 and other very divisive things that had happened at the state level. We both knew that building a stronger relationship with Mexico and economic importance of that, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, how critical that was. And we knew as a practical matter that if we were going to move the state forward, the leadership had to happen at the city level. And he and I working together to send a message that, you know, leaders matter. And so when the leaders can work closely together and overcome whatever rivalries had maybe occurred in the past between Phoenix and Tucson, the essentialness of us working together on statewide issues, we both got it, and we've tried to accomplish that in our times as mayor.
And we're seeing a lot of unity among mayors at the state level. What is it beyond just common interest that's driving you together? The legislature is clearly bringing you together.
They help. Really, there's the idea, and my numbers will be off. I'm always a little wrong on numbers, but it's my understanding that approximately 85% of the people in this state, even though we feel like we're a rural state, live in either incorporated areas or what are urban areas. And so what the state legislature does, which sometimes seems so counterintuitive to what cities want and need, affects all of us because it's 85% of us. And so we very much come together around the issues of local control, which again, ironically, you would think, but that's something that's very important to cities, and the way in which we redirect our revenues to our cities, state shared revenue. And those are at the League of Cities level, the area where all of the mayors, and it is nonpartisan. It's one of the great things about being a mayor. When I walk into that room with the other mayors, I don't know if you're a Democrat or Republican or an independent, we're pretty much on the same page.
Well, and let me take a shot at it as well. Look, we could sit here and bash the legislature, and we often do when mayors get together. But I would politely argue that too often the legislature is debates over political philosophy. At the city level, we're places of action. We got to get it done. Let them debate Agenda 21 at the legislature. We're going to pass smart sustainability policies at the city because global warming is affecting this world and cities are going to take the lead. Let them debate bills like 1062, divisive bills. We're going to pass smart discrimination regarding non-discrimination towards everyone, including our LGBT citizens at the city, because it's good for our economy. And let them debate thank you. And let them debate and pass bills on 1070, which do send very divisive messages, particularly regarding relationship with our local Latino community, which are the leaders of our current leaders and leaders of our future of our state, and also sends a very divisive message about a relationship with Mexico. Jonathan and I are going to travel to Mexico and build those relationships and open a trade office, which we're also going to be talking about in just a few moments. You get the point. Let them debate philosophical issues, hot political issues of the legislature. As city leaders, the expectation is we're just going to move the ball and get it done, and that's what we try to do.
Let's talk about education, because I think that's where you have the most interesting leadership questions. Mayor Stanton, I think you made education a big part of your first campaign. And people like me wondered, let's see, you don't appoint the school superintendent, you have no control over school budgets. What's a mayor doing getting involved in education? So what kind of levers can you pull? How do you use whatever leadership tools or skills you have to get things done in the area of education?
Well, let me talk first off, let's talk higher education, because when I ran for mayor, yourselves and others did ask the question, what the heck does the city have to do with education? And my polite response was, where have you been for the last decade? What city in the country has been more supportive of, in this case, higher education with our partnership with Arizona State University, our partnership with U of A? We have a spectacular downtown campus of Arizona State University. I was lucky enough to be on the council, chair of the Education Committee when that was going through. Mayor Gordon was the mayor at the time, and we were full partners in that endeavor. We wouldn't have that spectacular downtown campus with all the benefits, but for the city and the people of the city investing directly in that campus. We're under construction. You can see it from your window every day. We're under construction with the Arizona Center for Law and Society, the ASU Law School in downtown, with direct investment by the city. Grand Canyon University is growing leaps and bounds, thank goodness, and it's being done in full partnership with the city. The list goes on and on. But on K-12 education,
that's the one, K-12.
On K-12 education, we need to be actively involved in K-12 education. We'll be announcing soon at the City of Phoenix that we're going to be supporting an effort to get our local companies, many of you represented in this room, to support the education tax credit in high poverty areas in the city of Phoenix. I don't want to open up the paper ever again and see that my friends in Paradise Valley and Scottsdale get $150 average per child for their after school programs through the tax credit, where some of my inner city schools get less than $5 per child. That's the bully pulpit that I can use and say, donate to our public schools to even the odds. By the way, I don't actually support funding education through a tax credit, but as long as the legislature is going to go in that direction, I'm going to be an advocate for Phoenix schools, particularly in the higher poverty areas. We are opening in the city of Phoenix at our public libraries an online high school, a City of Phoenix online high school. If you're someone in your 20s or 30s and wasn't able to graduate high school first, and you don't want to get a GED, you actually want to get an accredited high school degree, you're going to come to the city of Phoenix online through our Phoenix Public Library. You know our library is awesome, Bram, better than anyone else. We're going to be offering online high school degrees that can be used for university applications. I can go on and on and on. But so instead of thinking of putting ourselves in a box and saying how we don't relate to education, the question that I ask as mayor is, what more can I do? What more can the city of Phoenix do to be supportive of our schools? Because we know that as our schools go, so goes the future of our city. It is one in the same.
Same question for you, Mayor Rothschild, and both of you have formed the Mayor's Education Roundtable to deal with this issue. How do you leverage whatever is out there, whatever bully pulpit you have, especially in the area of K-12?
You know, Bram, it's really interesting that you went after Greg when he said he was going to do something on education. I did the same thing. I said, I'm going to be a leader in education, and my newspaper wrote a big editorial. I know Rothschild's never run for office before, but he doesn't know what a mayor does. They don't have a thing to do with education. And I wrote back an editorial, said, really, because I think you think the mayors are supposed to lead on economic development, and there is no economic development in this state without a strong education system. And I can tell you, when businesses come to my office, and they come regularly, they don't ask about taxes, they ask about education. They say, what's your education system like? And they've got two reasons for it. One, they want a good workforce, ready workforce, and they're bringing their employees in who most have children, and they want to make sure they're going to get a good education. So after the newspaper got my response, I got elected, and I think we all know in this room the importance of early literacy, the importance of third graders being able to read by third grade, starting at the earliest age. So I went to the newspaper, I said, why don't you help me get 600 more volunteers out of our community for early childhood tutoring. And we joined together. Within 30 days, we had 600 citizen volunteers for a nonprofit in our community that had 500 before that. Those 600 volunteers take 4 kids a year in Title I schools, 2,400 kids that are now reading at third grade level. And again, I could go on and on, but you know, one of the things about the cities working together is Greg give me good ideas, I can give him good ideas. We have a inner city school district, Tucson Unified School District. Dropout rates similar in some of the mayor's education roundtable is working on is dropout rates. And I went to our superintendent and I said, you know, we talk, that's what we do. I want to do something. And he goes, well, when I was in Texas, I just got a list of the 500 kids who hadn't walked in the last spring, and I got community leaders to go out, and we walked to the houses. So I put a call out to our community. We had 250 people, including the school people, go out. We made contact. We had the U of A Wildcats, you know, Rondé Hollis Jefferson walks into your gym up here, it might scare you. He walks into your house with a kid who says, look, I could have dropped out of school, but this is what I did. We've already brought 225 of those dropouts back into school. We're on middle of September. And that really is the power that the mayors have in a community to move the needle in the way we need to do it.
You mentioned economic development, so take us inside a meeting with somebody looking for a site or a CEO. The news about Arizona schools has not been very good over the last several years, and they say, well, what about this lawsuit? What about your K-12 rankings? What's your answer? How do you respond?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go first, and I'll follow you. Go ahead, jump in.
We have a lot of good schools here, and we highlight the good schools we have. And I think that if you go into the public school system and some of the charter school systems, we really can bring good education. But you're right, these guys that are coming from around the country, they're looking at the big picture. And when they see that Arizona is 49th out of 50th in funding education, that's something that slows them down. And I don't think you're going to hear either Greg or I say that, you know, throw money at it and solves the problem. But we really do need to make that commitment. And we really do as a group. And Greg and I have talked about this, and I actually wrote the letter, Greg, so we're ready to do it. You know, when all that anti-immigrant bill was in the legislature, it really was the CEOs of the 60 largest companies of this state, most of them being in Phoenix, who wrote a letter to the legislature who said, stop, enough. You're hurting business. You're not helping business. We need to get that same kind of approach with education. We need to get the business community to come forth and say, we need you so that we can get better business in this state. And so we're going to do that. And so we just keep telling them, we're okay, we can be better, but it's something we got to deal with.
We have excellent schools in our city. We have excellent schools, some of the best. If you look at the rankings across the country, some of the schools in Tucson rank with the very, very best. But that doesn't mean we don't need to even do more. And some people suggest that because we have some of the very best schools in the entire country, somehow that solves all the education problems. Look, Mayor Rothschild and I spend more of our time doing economic development than anything else, either meeting with local companies, asking them to invest more here and create more jobs here, or trying to recruit entrepreneurs or other high-wage jobs to come to this community. And yes, we can sell with the best of them, and that is our job, to sell with the best of them about the economic opportunity if investments are made here. But make no mistake, the perception that we at a leadership level don't put as much emphasis on supporting education as we should does make that a challenging economic development environment. There is no doubt. And what I tell people is, if we decided to support our schools more and not be ranked at the bottom in terms of education funding, not only would that be a long-term economic development play in terms of building a better workforce, it would be an immediate economic benefit because it would send all the right messages about the priorities here in the city. When we do this economic development recruiting, education matters a lot, transportation matters a lot, arts and culture matters a lot. You got to have a competitive economic environment, but you got to be a place that people want to come to. So these issues are not secondary issues when it comes to creating the right kind of economy and jobs. They are primary issues, as important as any other in our economic development advantage game, if you will.
Let's keep on that subject, talking about Mexico, trade with Mexico, and I'll ask you a question very similar to one I just asked a second ago. So you're in Mexico. You meet business people there. You say, hello, I'm from Arizona. How do you get past what I expect to be a pretty natural reaction to Arizona, Mayor?
Well, let me start, because I never say that. I say, I'm from Tucson. and this actually is something I was going to segue for you into education. Our community in Tucson, and I think the city of Phoenix is similar, we're very close to being a majority-minority population. We're a population, last I checked yesterday, is 43% Hispanic. Now what that means, and we're closer, we're 60 miles from the border. From my office, I can see to Mexico. I'm on the 10th floor. And our air is still clear. But you have to think of that as a very large population that is not homogeneous. It includes folks whose families have been there from the 1700s. And it also includes folks whose families have been here 3 weeks, and everything in between. And so for my community, it's not just a question of watching a very rising giant, expected to go from the 15th largest economy in the world to the 5th in the next 20 years, and how do we who are so positioned, Tucson, Phoenix, and the Canamex, to take advantage of that? For us, this is families. For us, this is people who've been crossing these borders for literally centuries. And we are in a wonderful position to take advantage of that. Now, Greg and I have traveled to Mexico together, Mexico City, Hermosillo. I've been to Culiacan, Mazatlan. I go regularly into Sonora because it's very much a relational, as everything is, a relational situation. Greg did a great job the first time he went down to Mexico City with me, taking the business community and having that case made. But we still get the question. And what we say to them is, look, here's Greg Stanton, here's Jonathan Rothschild. We're not that other Arizona you hear about. And we represent the real Arizona. And as we develop the relationships, this is how we're going to move that needle so that the Mexican businesses that are growing take a foothold here in Tucson or Phoenix, and our businesses can penetrate that rising middle class in Mexico, which is so large and is, as far as I'm concerned, is the #1 key to our future economy.
I would argue that that our one job is to convince our friends in Mexico, business leaders, that doing business with Phoenix and Tucson and Arizona will be smart for their long-term bottom line. But I would argue that job #1 is for Mayor Rothschild and myself to use the bully pulpit that we've been blessed with to make the case here locally first, why a close working relationship, a close business partnership with our friends south of the border is so critically important to our economy locally. So we have to make kind of a dualistic argument, both the case back home as to why this is a priority, when people here have often gotten very different messages, and of course also make the case in Mexico, Hermosillo, Mexico City, and other key portions of Mexico. And of course the case here locally is we are blessed with a wonderfully diverse population. We are blessed with a Latino population that is younger than average. With a bilingual population, a very entrepreneurial population, a population that positions us incredibly well for trade. So we've got the right pieces here for success in Mexico, and we just haven't fully taken advantage of that. There's no doubt that these divisive laws that have been passed in Arizona has been a setback. And people in Mexico who used to travel here for tourism, et cetera, they voted with their feet and have generally gone elsewhere. It's starting to head back in the right direction. And that's why it was so critically important for us with the positions that we've been in to go down there and say, as city leaders, as municipal leaders, your partners, cities that you recognize, Phoenix and Tucson, we're here to say it's time to reestablish this relationship. We understand the essentialness of this relationship, that Sonora and Arizona are two states, one heartbeat, one economic reality, that your success is our success. And I think that message is being heard, and it's going to be heard loud and clear when we travel down next month and open that trade office in Mexico City. That's really the physical manifestation of this success story that we're seeing in an ongoing basis with regard to trade with Mexico. It's heading in the right direction.
You both raise an interesting issue facing leaders. You can see 5 years ahead. You can see 10 years ahead. You know where we're going. What people here see is the latest headline on sending troops to the border, or who's coming over or not. How much energy do you put into helping people see the 2 years, the 5 year, the 10-year picture versus dealing with what's now? Is it even worth looking that far ahead and trying to create that vision?
I'll jump in first on that one. The answer is, of course. If we don't do that, we are going to miss out on a massive opportunity. Look, we are in a competitive economic environment. Our jobs as mayor is to make sure that we put our city, the people of our city, in the best competitive position. And if we don't see what's happening around us, to our neighbors to the west with California, our neighbors to the east in Texas, who are so far ahead of us with regard to the relationships that they have and therefore the economic development and the infrastructure at the border that is ahead of our state and the businesses in our state. And my message is, one is not the opposite of the other. We are not naive to some of the challenges at the border, and the United States and Mexico need to work together to fight the drug cartels and the other challenges at the border. But don't let that, while we're doing that, does not mean we should do anything else but continue to move forward with the economic relationship. If we allow the economic relationship to atrophy as a result of politics or misperceptions, we are doing long-term harm to the people of our community. So we have no choice, in my opinion, but to look ahead 5-10 years of what's happening and to take the appropriate steps now, though sometimes it will be criticized somehow as being naive to what's going on at the border. I would politely argue just the opposite. People who argue that you have to deal with border activity and not the economic development side of it, they're the ones who are being naive in terms of what's in the best interest of our citizens here locally for the future.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, not respond to it, but maybe supplement it. Part of being a leader, well, first of all, you got to have a lot of energy. You got to have a very thick skin. But you have to be very broad-minded in a way that in our normal business lives, we don't have to be. So that I am constantly having to think, and any leader has to constantly be having to think 10, 20, 30 years out in front and seeing what that vision is and seeing what those projects are. And while I'm doing that thinking, I'm answering my 17 constituent emails about my pothole and about my police officer and about this homeless person I saw on the street. And that's part of leadership. And that's part of, if we're going to move this state in the direction we need to take it, and you sit with Laddie Kerr, you look at any of the projects, we know where the state needs to go. And we've heard it here today. We know the Arizona we want, but is that the Arizona we have? And it's a combination of looking forward and not losing track of those big projects, which take a lot of patience, and at the same time answering the day-to-day concerns, which all of us are concerned about. And it's a great question.
All right. Let's talk about the Mexico City office. It's going to open October 6th, is that
Correct.
right?
Yep.
And it's a partnership with the Commerce Authority, with the state. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks might be asking, what took so long? What took so long? Well, what took so long?
Well, when you say what took so, arguably this should have been open before Mayor Rothschild and I were ever in office. It should have been done years and years ago. Look, as long as everyone agrees, you're not going to tweet this out or Facebook what I'm about to say. Can we all get an agreement on that?
Hold on.
I am glad that the state of Arizona is opening up a trade office in Mexico City. It's the right thing to do. I do believe that Mayor Rothschild and myself, by making this such a high-profile issue, we were going to do it no matter what as partners as the city. So we were going to open up a Phoenix and Tucson office jointly together down in Mexico City, and I really believe that got the momentum going for the state to do it. Probably it's fair to say we kind of reared up a little bit to allow, I think partnership is important, and to allow the state to catch up to where the cities were, and we're going to open up in partnership. So how it's going to work is there will be a Arizona office down in Mexico, but each of the cities will have their individual. Phoenix will have a full-time representative who's only looking after Phoenix and our region's efforts, but it's going to jointly use the space in the Arizona office. Ultimately, I thought that sent all the right messages about where we're headed as a state. A little bit of independent identity as the city of Phoenix, still being done in partnership with the Arizona Commerce Authority, but there was no doubt that if we hadn't gotten the momentum going, if you will, in the right direction, I don't think we'd be having this great announcement next month. And it has been too late. We got a lot of catching up to do, so let's roll up our sleeves and do it.
Well, and my view of that is, in Tucson, we actually have offices in Hermosillo, Obregon, Culiacan, and Nogales, Sonora is 60 miles from us with 450,000 people and 8 Fortune 500 companies. Believe me, I go there a lot. Mexico City is a world city. It is one of the world's leading cities. And it is the right thing to do to have an Arizona presence, because it's going to take an Arizona presence to penetrate that market. And Phoenix will be there, Tucson will be there, Arizona will be there. And that's, if Greg and I were to say today, close to 3 years into our term, what's been one of our biggest accomplishments, I really do believe it's been that leadership of turning this from a discussion of whatever it was before to one of, look, we are economic development partners, and the state, I think, gets it now, and that's a great thing for all of us.
I want to move to water now as our final discussion topic. My feeling is talking to folks, water is going to be a huge issue. Coming the end of this year into next year. You are now dealing with it in a way that's fairly innovative. I want to talk about just the mechanics, what you're doing and why, and just broaden out into a bigger discussion of how you actually talk about water in Arizona without scaring the you-know-what out of people.
I don't know if I don't try to scare the you-know-what out of people. Well, there's a couple levels on that. First is, I don't think you have to scare the you-know-what out of people. I think water is going to be here, but I think we have to be very careful about it. In Tucson, we've recognized for a long time that water is the #1 issue. When I go out and I meet with builders and developers, and we have some controversial water policies in Tucson, and I try to explain, look guys, without water, nothing. Nothing. No building. Nothing. So that's sort of the scary part. But the fact of the matter is, so through some of the things that Tucson has done, particularly with our CAP allotment, we actually have a rising water table in the desert, one of the few places in the country that can say that. And we have, for years and years and years, beat the drum about conservation, xeriscaping. We don't have grass, okay? Xeriscaping, water harvesting, irrigation systems. Now, when you build a new road in our community, it employs water conservation techniques for drainage and waste and flood water. So we can do a lot, but you're absolutely right. We have to put this as the top priority, and I'll let Greg speak to it, but it is so important that now Tucson and Phoenix are working on an agreement together.
Well, part of what we talked about today is perception issues in the state of Arizona and the unique role of mayors, particularly of large city mayors, to help overcome some of those perceptions, many of them false perceptions. Look, there's been a lot of national media about Arizona and water issues that do scare people, and business leaders around the country read those articles, and they are concerned about locating their business or growing their business here, whether or not they're going to have the appropriate allocation of water resources for their future. And that's why it's important that Phoenix and Tucson partner together. Ways in which you would normally not think the two big cities of the state would partner together. But water conservation partnership, I would politely argue, isn't as sexy, but it is as important as any other partnership that Phoenix and Tucson. And we're going to be signing an agreement, Mayor Rothschild and I, in just a few weeks, in which we are going to store Phoenix water in Tucson aquifers, which will allow the aquifer level to go up, which is healthier for their aquifer. In case of additional drought, they'll be able to use our water. We'll be able to capture more CAP water that is coming down the canal, which is a smarter way of us to dealing with it. So as a result of this, we're both going to do better on water conservation. We're both going to do a better job of protecting our water rights, because you're paying attention to these issues. Bram, I know you are paying close attention to these issues. You know the long-term protection, the legal protection of our water rights is critically important, and the more you use it, the more you can protect it. This partnership between Phoenix and Tucson on water will better able Phoenix to protect our long-term water position and our water rights. So it's truly the proverbial win-win for both communities, but it took not only Mayor Rothschild and I working closely together, our professional staffs working together, and when we make that announcement, hopefully we get some national news, because it's a very innovative solution that we are working together as the two largest cities in the state to deal with exactly the issue that has gotten so much negative national publicity. Are we doing enough to conserve water? We're paying close attention, obviously, to the drought, to the water table levels in Lake Mead and Lake Powell, et cetera. I could sit here and argue that Phoenix has done all that we should in terms of protecting long-term water rights with the requirement of the 99-year water planning before you can build a development. But the reality is we've got some major perception issues that we have to deal with. The partnership between Phoenix and Tucson is innovative and is going to be innovative enough. I do believe it'll make national news and help to change that perception a little bit nationally.
Look ahead, though, because that won't end the fight. This is going to be a fight among Arizona, Nevada, California, several other western states. How do the mayors get a seat at that table when it looks like it's going to play out among governors and even in Congress?
Well, you raise a very important issue that we're dealing with in real time. There are a lot of players at that table, as we discuss the future of water in our region of the United States of America in light of the historic drought conditions. And we hope and pray we get a great snow this winter and we can start to go in the other direction. But you have to hope for the best and plan for the worst. You are absolutely right. It is critically important that mayors, particularly mayors of big cities, have a seat at the decision-making table. We're advocates for the people that we represent, and that doesn't take away anything from governors or heads of our water planning agencies here locally. We are just blessed with a unique profile, a unique bully pulpit, and using that bully pulpit for the long-term protection of our water rights to make sure that our foremothers and forefathers that got us such a significant allotment of the Colorado River water, who did right by future generations, that we do justice by them by making sure we protect that interest that they did such a good job of getting for us. We owe it to our citizens now and in the future to have a bigger seat at the table. And I, as Mayor of Phoenix, plan to have a very, very big seat at the decision-making table as it relates to the future of water in our region.
We have less than a minute left. I want to ask each of you real quickly, one area where you think the cities can have the biggest impact, but you haven't even touched yet. Or have you done it all?
No, we're not at all close. I think one of the things the cities are going to have to look at in conjunction with the legislature and cooperatively, and again, we're not going to make this law, but we're going to be incredibly affected by it, is the tax structure of our state, how we fairly tax and distribute. that's going to affect all the public services, police, fire, water, and we have to get that right.
Tax structure.
There's so many. I would just say making sure that all of our diverse populations, which represent the future, have a seat at the leadership table. Next year at the Leadership Forum, we're going to make sure that all the speakers represent the wonderful diverse populations that make up our state. And that's essential for the economic development of our future, that everyone have a seat at the table, and we pass public policies and use our bully pulpit to ensure that occurs. There's a lot of other issues, but that's a huge one for us in the future.
All right. Mayor Greg Stanton, Mayor Jonathan Rothschild, thank you very much.
Thank you.